Bringing consciousness into teaching, this is really the question. Well, maybe the question is bringing consciousness into every day of our lives, every moment of our lives, which obviously isn't really possible because that's not how our brain is set up. But we'll talk about this as we move forwards. Provocative question to start with, maybe. How many of you would say that you are fully conscious most of the time? Just give me a little hint. Maybe we could use a measuring scale of 1 to 10. Where would you say you are on the scale? With that daily consciousness. So, Bettina, you're about a 7 or 8. Megan, you're a 5. Peasy, 7. Thank you, all of you, for sharing these numbers. And obviously, it's just to have an idea. Ollie, 3.1415. I think you're on pi level there, Ollie. Yes, absolutely. Beautiful. And quite a few of you saying 9, 10, 8, 7, 8. Brilliant. Right. Well, hopefully by the end of the webinar, you feel the same. I just want to introduce me and what we do. There are some of our neurolanguage coaches in the audience today, so thank you for being here. For those of you who don't know us, neurolanguage coaching is about integrating professional coaching, ICF gold standard, plus the neuro. And I say the neuro because it's neuroscience, neuropsychology, neuroeducation, it's emotional intelligence, it's psychology, it's all of that neuro, fully integrated into the learning process, especially with language learning. And this journey of becoming aware of consciousness for me started 25 years ago when I began my professional coaching journey. It was back in 2003, 2004, when I started to go into training, learning to be a coach. And I would say it's something that never, ever, ever stops. It's an evolution in life. Why does consciousness matter now? Definitely, I think we are in this historic moment in time, not only in education, but on all levels of life. And definitely, and many of you have heard me say this, we are not talking enough about the trauma post-pandemic. A lot of trauma from that pandemic that is subconscious for many children, teenagers, young adults, and even for us as mature adults. And hopefully, we're going to start to talk much, much more about this. At the same time, there's a lot going on, safety, security, a lot of uncertainty for many, many people across the world, a lot of unstable regions across the world, a lot of instability with work, with survival, AI kicking in, and it will increase a lot over the next 2-3 years. It's getting faster and faster and faster. So as all of this is going on, how do we remain calm, centered, and more conscious? And we as educators, how do we help others to do that too? So consciousness matters. And obviously we're focusing on this question. Who are we being while we teach? And how much of what we are doing is on automatic pilot? And how do we shift most of what we are doing into intentional teaching? And I think that's the mission, that's the quest. So what is consciousness in teaching? Well, we could say that we're not only focused on content delivery, but we're also noticing internally what's happening to us, and externally what's happening to them. Now, this requires a lot of skill because it really requires us to be omnipresent or omni-noticing, the omni-observer. We're looking also at not only thoughts or emotions, we're also looking at judgments, assumptions. We're looking at reactions, our reactions, their reactions, all of it coming together. And that's where I think we are training ourselves more and more to do this. For those of you who know me, you know this is where I start. The etymology, the dictionary, the meaning of words. What is consciousness? I think there's a lot of connotations with different disciplines, whether it's spiritual, whether it's religious, whether it's psychology, whether it's neuroscience. There are a lot of different definitions of consciousness. But if we look at the dictionary, we go right to the root of the word, the quality or the state of being aware, especially of something within oneself, or the state of being conscious of an external. So here it's also bringing in the internal and the external, that awareness. And when we go into the philosophy, going back to Descartes, I say it with a Spanish accent, by the word thought, I understand all that of which we are conscious as operating in us. If we move into the father of psychology, William James, and his definition of consciousness, he really classified it as the continuous stream of thoughts rather than a collection of separate mental events. And then if we take it a step further, we can now start to classify consciousness under different labels. Now, before I go further, I've chosen this as my subtitle slide, the picture. And I would love you to be conscious of this picture as we move through. Because at some point, I'm going to be asking you, what do you see in this picture? Now, consciousness is attention. And here we start to come into some of the research on consciousness. 2014, in this particular research, there was I'm going to call it a juxtaposition of conscious and conscience. I found this definition of consciousness really quite helpful because it's the function of the mind that receives and processes information, crystallizes it, stores it, or rejects it with the help of the five senses, the reasoning ability of the mind, imagination and emotion, plus the memory. And this other sentence, which was key a little bit further down in that research, saying that awareness and wakefulness represent the two main components of consciousness. And if we move still in this realm of attention, it's very deeply connected to what we notice and what we bring into awareness. Now, I often ask this question. Our brain is giving feedback to every single part of our body. What gives feedback to the brain? It has to be the brain. And it has to be this conscious part of the brain that is turning the mirror inwards to reflect and notice and observe. So the brain becomes the observer of itself. Now, when we are in our teaching environment and our learning environments, we're turning the mirror on ourselves, but then we're also observing behaviors, mistakes, content. We're observing the silences, the paralinguistics, or the motivation or the engagement. We're really focusing in on how they're feeling or not. Or is there any effort there? And all of that starts coming into that same observing hat. Not easy, not easy at all. Now let's move into the consciousness from the perspective of emotion, because in the 1990s, we then had some of the early neuroscientists really talking about the fact that consciousness is not just the cognitive functions. It is very heavily linked to emotion and feeling and the sense of self as well. And Damasio really spoke about the fact that consciousness is also a feeling of what's happening. And it's the mind noticing as well how our body is reacting. And he also stated that it's a mechanism for survival. And the body, the emotion, and the mind are interlinked. And without all of these, there can be no consciousness. And this is where, if we focus in on these emotions, and I always say that Stephen Krashen was before his time. He really was spot on with his theory of the affective filter. And what we are doing now, as we start to become much more conscious of their emotional state, we start to help them going from this fight or flight into a safe learning space and into what I call the perfect learning state. Now, in a minute as well, we're going to be looking at emotional contagion, because how I come into that space can also influence how they then perceive, receive, and interpret information. So if I am a dysregulated teacher, I'm potentially creating a dysregulated environment and a dysregulated learning process as well. So what are our objectives here? Well, the objectives here are helping them to recognize their own emotions, recognize their emotional triggers, and help them to respond, but not react. Now, just as a side note here, it's very important to understand that as teachers, we are not there to become therapists. We are not psychotherapists. We are not there to go into those deeper psychological problems. What we're trying to do is help them in that learning space. And we're helping them to bring in the awareness of how they're feeling, what's working, what's not. If they are going into panic or fight or flight, how do we help them to deal with it, to cope? So at this point, we're really looking at how to recognize and how to help them change those reactions and get them back into that learning state. I think the real message is to share with our learners that, there's nothing wrong. The brain is actually doing the job of keeping you safe, because in those moments, maybe your brain felt that there was a threat. So the brain then starts to go into the threat response. And this is where it's very, very, very important to explain to learners what is happening. What's happening when we go into a threat response, when we get this bodily reaction. The more I see how we explain it and how people start to understand it and then start to be able to cope and change reactions, the more I see how people respond to that in a positive way, and children especially. Now, some of you may have heard me say we work with a lot of different clients, all of us as neurolanguage coaches. Some of our coaches actually work in schools and with little children. And one of our kindergarten teachers who took the courses and really took this part on board, she started to share with her little kindergarten kiddies about the brain and started to explain when they get nervous, this is the brain. And she used the Daniel Siegel brain hand model. And she would explain, this is your brain. And when it's happy, it's happily in its place. But when there's something that troubles us or makes us nervous or something we get upset about, this part of the brain, which is the front, runs away and the amygdala comes out frightened. And she actually showed this to the kiddies, explained it in baby language, and said to them, if you feel upset or stressed or something is happening, show me. And if I feel it, I'm going to show you as well. And she called me some months after and she said, Rachel, you wouldn't believe it. The kids literally are showing me when they're stressed. They're putting their hand up and they're waggling their thumb. And I'm doing the same. I'm saying, kiddies, you're stressing me. Help. And what they would do is then they would come into coping strategies, like all coming together, breathing or singing or doing something to help alleviate that stress. How I wish I had grown up knowing about this. How many of you would have liked to have grown up knowing about fight or flight? Yes, Tamar. You know, I remember those early years, and to tell you the truth, everybody, in my late 20s, I went through a bout of having panic attacks. Now, Bessel van der Kolk, one of the psychologists who wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I do recommend it. He says in that book that 90% of the population, 90% will have panic attacks at some point in our lives. Some people have it as a child, some people as a teenager, some people in their 20s, some people in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. At some point it will happen. How I wish I'd have known about it back then. But above all, how I wish I'd have known it was normal. That it wasn't just me, the freaky one. And that's what you are going to be doing when you explain to kids, teenagers, adults, learners, anybody, this fight or flight mode is normal. It's our survival mode. It's the big message that somewhere, something, your brain is telling you it's not safe. And if that's happening in a learning environment, we need to talk about it. We need to understand what is the trigger. So yes, Ollie, it's not your fault. And we also have to recognize that when the nervous system feels unsafe, one of the first things to go offline is language. We're language educators. We want them to speak. We want them to learn the language. If they go into that state, they can't. They really can't. Megan, I'm just reading your beautiful message here. One of your learners brought a smartwatch to monitor his stress levels. since we talked about the threat response, and it helps him to regulate. Brilliant. Brilliant. He reports after 5 minutes with you, his watch shows low stress when the rest of the day he's on medium stress. Brilliant. Yes. By the way, everyone as well, nowadays you have this neurofeedback where you put on this cap, which then feeds information to a computer program. And it's reading your brainwaves, and the stress levels can be detected through brainwaves as well. And a lot of people are using neurofeedback to learn how to regulate, because honestly, we can take control of this operating system. We can take control. That's a message that I didn't realize until I started to come into my late 40s. I hope we can bring this message to thousands of kiddies so they can grow up differently. So, talk about fight or flight. Get them to understand they can change the reactions, they can regulate their stress. So we've looked at consciousness as attention. We've looked at consciousness connected to emotions. Now let's look at consciousness in relation to metacognition, because this is the awareness. I am aware that I'm aware. Now, again, the etymology of this word fascinates me because it has both the Greek and the Roman. It has the Roman conoscere, to know, which is the conscious brain. But the Greek meta, which is beyond, is representing the subconscious brain. So I don't know about you, but actually for me, this word feels like we have the two sides of the brain here in one word. Metacognition. I'm going beyond my knowledge, my cognitive, let's say, abilities to observe myself. And metacognition in the late 1970s, the term was actually interpreted and coined by John Flavel. And he really called it this thinking about thinking. I believe it's the American Psychology Association. I need to check, but they talk about the fact that we have something like 80,000 thoughts running around our brain all day. And most of them are negative. Now, when you start to observe, we can actually control the stream of thought. Even though we don't believe it, we can. Now, Cross and Paris, later in the 80s, they defined it as the knowledge and control children have over their own thinking and learning. They defined it with children. Hennessy, the awareness of one's own thinking. And then you have more definitions as we move forwards. You've got Costa, McElwee, Catty. And all the time it's this, I am aware that I am aware. Isn't that a beautiful statement? I'm aware that I'm aware. And this constant awareness is what we are striving for. Oh, Ollie, I just love your play on words. Awareness. Awareness. Yes. Love it. Now, what does it mean for us? Well, as we move into this learning space, it is the awareness, but it's also the awareness of how to learn and bringing your learners to understand how they learn. And here, without getting into problems or a fight with the neuroscientists who actually say that learning styles don't exist, I'm going to suggest that we need to look at preferred ways of learning. because we may have a way that we connect with and enjoy, and it helps us to learn more effectively. Also, learner autonomy. A learner autonomy is bringing that awareness to the learner. And when we bring in the neuroscience, we really help them to understand, how does their brain react? How does their brain function? What is happening for them as they are learning? How can we improve the way that each individual learns? And let's go back to the research demonstrating that every single brain is different. Functional makeup is the same, but genetic and experience is different for every single one of us. So we always have to come from the premise that everybody's baseline is different. How do I find out what your baseline is? And even how do you even find out what it is? So everything is to enhance the learning. At the end of the day, that's what we're doing this for, to also make the learning more effective, more efficient. And understanding that our brain is a connection machine. It really is. It is the most incredible operating system on Earth. I seriously don't think we really understand how amazing we all are. And constantly, the brain is seeking the patterns, the meaning, the understanding. It's predicting as well. So we've looked at consciousness as attention, emotions, metacognition. I just want to bring in this reflective practice and reflection, because this was something that Sean actually introduced with this reflective practitioner. And he talks about this reflection in action. So during the action itself. So if you are teaching, then you are teaching, you're observing, you're interpreting, you're adjusting to the moment. But there's also the reflection on action, which is afterwards. How did that go today? How was my learner? What did my learner learn? How was I? What emotional state was I in? What reactions did I have? What reactions did the learner have? How effective was the learning? What could I have done better? Now, apparently, there's also some practitioners or some researchers have taken it a step further, and they've introduced the reflection during action. So maybe pre-action. We've already got during, pre-action. So they're talking about before having a reflective process, during we're in it and we're reflecting, and then afterwards that reflective practice. Now, this is actually something that we could all think about introducing into everything that we do. The pre, the during, the after. Now, let's just have a little talk about this awareness. Where is it in the brain? And obviously, we need to talk about the fact that prefrontal cortex is responsible for the executive functions. So I think now this is becoming common knowledge that this is the part of the brain, the conscious part of the brain. We have working memory here. So when you learn something, everybody, this is the first port of call. Working memory, this is where we are deciding, planning, judging, self-monitoring. We've got the impulse control here. We've got emotional regulation here. We spoke about fight or flight earlier. If we have a learner that goes into fight or flight, the executive functions are compromised. When you think about blood is pumping out of the major organs, out of the brain, into the arms, into the legs, so that you can run away or you can fight. We have to understand that the resources we need in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus are depleting. Now, I don't know about you, but there are times when I can actually feel it. You know, when you're going into a fight or flight, you can't think. And sometimes, literally, you just shut down. I know I've confessed this various times, everybody, but if ever I'm stopped by the police, I just go into silly mode. I've no idea why. It must be from childhood. I have such ingrained in my brain authority, respect, keep quiet, don't say anything, behave. And literally, in those seconds that I'm stopped by the police, it's like, and even to the extent, by the way, I got stopped the other day. It's quite funny actually, because as soon as they start to flag me, I literally stop. And this man got angry because I stopped before him. I didn't stop where he was, because my brain literally just reacts in that moment. So then he's like pulling me over to come towards him. I get towards him and then he's angry. You know, it's like, when I tell you to stop, you come and you stop here. I couldn't argue. I couldn't speak. I just looked at him with these big eyes as if to say, can't speak. And he literally went into a monologue. And I'm trying to see if I could speak. Nothing was coming out. And when that happens, it makes me really understand, wow, this is happening to a lot of our learners all the time. Remember, language is one of the first things to go offline in that state. And when you're speaking in a foreign language, even more. So, prefrontal cortex. But then we've got the emotional regulation. Now, this is interesting because this is our ability to monitor, evaluate, and modify those emotional reactions. Now, remember, it's still here in this prefrontal cortex. It's still here in the executive functioning. And Daniel Siegel actually calls it mind sight. Now, when you think about fight or flight, Joseph Ledoux talks about the low road and the high road. When the brain takes the low road, you're going from the thalamus, the radar, to the amygdala, the alarm. If the alarm is sounded and yes, there's a threat, brainstem, bodily reaction. The hypothalamus, hormonal release. That's the low road because you're going from the thalamus down to the amygdala, down to the brainstem. But the other way is the high road. And as soon as we detect that radar, the thalamus is detecting, we start to observe it and we start to take it into that prefrontal cortex realm. And we start to observe what's happening to me. And the more we start to observe it, it might be at first you can't catch it, but then you start catching it and start catching it a little bit more and more seconds where I'm observing it more, and then more seconds where I'm actually changing my reaction to it. I'm not reacting to it. And this is the observing it rather than being overwhelmed by it. Now, when we become aware and we help our learners to become aware, let's take a business executive who has to give presentations in English and they're absolutely terrified. They're going to that fight or flight reaction. They're shaking. They're struggling to get the words out. We need to talk to them about fight or flight. We need to explain this is the brain taking this as a threat and then responding to that threat by pushing you into survival mode. Now, what we need to do is start to get you to observe this and to rehearse and to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, because one of the only ways that you are going to overcome this is by observing it and normalizing that activity. The more you do it, the more you do it, the more your brain will take it as something normal. And the brain then will start to create a habit around it. As soon as the brain creates a habit, the brain's happy. This is why it's so important to talk to our learners about fight or flight, about observing. Now, Posner and Rothbard actually then, in their research, they identified 3 major attention networks. And we go back to this conscious awareness. Now, the first one is the alerting network, the arousal. If I clip my fingers, you're going to start to hear it and become aroused. And that's the sort of, I'm ready. And this is where you really are using that frontal cortex, parietal cortex, locus coeruleus. First time I'm saying that one. Then, once it's aroused, you orientate towards where that sound is coming from. So you're directing the attention to it. And there it's, what should I focus on? And then the eyes kick in as well. And then the third step is focusing in and sustaining the focus. Now, this is the executive attention network where you really are staying focused, even though there are other things going on around you. Now, this is where concentration kicks in. This is where focus starts to become sustained. So those are the 3 networks. And obviously, when you come into this consciousness, you are going to be engaging all of them. Now, we also need to talk about, in the brain, we need to talk about the mirror neurons, because first identified in monkeys, we know that, but more and more we are seeing that, yes, they are activating when we are observing, when we are with somebody else. So action on observation is real. But when we bring the mirror neurons together with emotional contagion, this for me is one of the most fascinating points. Emotional contagion is real at a very, very subconscious level. And in millionths of seconds, we are perceiving. If any of you are Spanish speakers, you might want to have a look at some of the work of Jacobo Grimberg. Jacobo Grimberg was fascinated with emotional contagion, and a lot of his work was about this. And he was Mexican, and he was studying at New York University. And he was heavily, heavily studying this when he disappeared. Marisa, veo que lo conoces. Sí, sí, sí. So he disappeared, everybody. Nobody knows yet to this day what happened to Jacobo Grimberg. Mysteries of life. I'll leave that with you as one of the things to research out of this webinar. But emotional contagion is real. So we have this research from 2021 where the students' perceptions of teachers' emotions were associated with their own emotions. When students perceived teachers as emotionally authentic, they reported higher enjoyment and less anger and less anxiety. And I'm going to hang on the word authenticity. They sense when we're being authentic. Emotional contagion on a very subconscious level is real. So conscious teaching isn't just delivering content. And I think this is what we've had for, can I say, centuries, where the focus was very much on the teacher, how good the teacher is, the content delivery, how much the teacher knows, etc. We're turning this around. We are turning this around because it's no longer about us at all. It's about the learners. How much do they learn in every single session that they're sitting with me? How much are they taking away? How are they feeling with it? How are they learning? What emotional state are they learning in? How can I regulate myself? Because teaching requires patience, it requires calm. I might not be in the right brain state when I go into that session. I've got a lot going on in my life. So, how do we regulate ourselves? How are we bringing in the internal observations? How are we bringing in the external observations? As many of you know, I very much feel that professional coaching allows us as educators to modify the way that we communicate in such a way that we can bring in the consciousness, we can bring in the efficiency, we can bring in the authenticity. And at the same time, professional coaching is safeguarding us. It's helping us to regulate and manage ourselves. How can professional coaching help? Well, going beyond the words. Active listening is a skill. It really is. Many people that come to my course for the first time, all of them, I know they're going to say, I'm a good listener. I'm a teacher. I'm a good listener. But the truth of the matter is, and this is something that, again, I want all of you, after this webinar, I want you to go away and reflect. When you are listening to other people, how busy is your brain? Because that's the measurement. If you are listening and thoughts start kicking in, your answer starts kicking in, your judgments, your opinions, anything starts kicking in, you're not listening. When you're listening, the brain should be quiet. Because in fact, I'm listening. When you've finished, then I'm going to start thinking and speaking. And that requires discipline. It requires training. Now, the one thing as a coach that we do to help us with this is reformulate. Reformulate back. Am I hearing this? Is this what you're saying? And to be able to reformulate, you have to listen. You have to. Now, it's interesting because I know that we live in a world, and I was observing this the other day. We live in a world where one person will share something or say something, and the other person, instead of listening or demonstrating compassion or some sort of acknowledgement of what that person has said, the other person goes off with their own story. And I was observing this the other day because there's a lady who looks after my mother. And one part of the conversation, she was talking to somebody about something, and this person was saying that they had been on holiday, and then the other was saying, well, I've done this and I've done that, and the other one was going back and saying, well, I've done this and I've done that. And it was quite interesting to watch this ping pong conversation when neither of them was listening to what the other said, or acknowledging or recognizing or even commenting on what the other person said. I find that quite sad, that we live in a world where people are not stopping to listen and talk to somebody about what they're sharing. We're constantly in a world where everybody wants to override everybody else with their information. And this is something as well, part of the coaching experience, it's never about us. It's never about me sharing. It's about me finding out from you, acknowledging your input. And listening is also about silence. It's about going into silence much, much more so that they can hear their own thoughts. And that takes us into questions. When we are constantly questioning, we're not giving them thinking time. And when we're jumping in because they don't answer, we're making them feel, you're not fast enough for me. Professional coaching trains us to do all of this. And above all, it really does encourage that reflection, because we're constantly asking powerful questions to help them create awareness. Well, how does that feel for you? What are you noticing? What's coming up for you? Oh, I've just seen a smile. What can you tell me about that? Ah, just seen you flinch. What was that about? So we are constantly the mirror. And I always say soundboarding, reflecting back, but giving them a safe space to do that in. And the safe space is no judgment. No judgment at all. And that's where we have to be very, very careful what we're saying as comments. So all of it is about helping them to discover themselves. And as I said, professional coaching really does take us into the space of skills to communicate. Now, I want to touch upon, and this is where I'm going to get a bit provocative, everybody. I want to touch upon the fact that we do need to be aware of certain things in our identity as teachers. And sometimes there is this crystallized role of this is the teacher, this is the learner, and these are the behaviors. One of the behaviors that we have to start recognizing more is the teacher pleasing behavior. And teacher pleasing are learners who constantly want to be reassured. They constantly want you to be telling them what's right, what's not. They agree with you even when they don't agree with you. They say yes even when they really don't want to do something, or they want to say no. This is what we have to start dialoguing more about. So in this learning process, this isn't about you pleasing me. This is about you pleasing you. This is about you learning. This is about you walking away and being able to do it without me. So in this whole process, I need you to be telling me what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, and that we're talking and dialoguing more about the process. So it's no longer me telling you what to do all the time. It really is, the focus is on your development. It's not focused on the approval from me. I was going to say then, and I'm not sure, it might be a little bit extreme, but I'm going to say it. I don't matter here. The person that matters here is you, my learner, walking away with this knowledge. That's the most important thing. And constantly asking those questions, how can I help you to understand and grow? Now, to avoid teacher pleasing, certain things that we can do. Firstly, Carol Dweck, normalizing mistakes. Famously, you have the pass exams and the not yet mark, introduced by Carol Dweck. Isn't that beautiful? You're not yet there. You're on the journey, but not yet. You're nearly there. How can I help you to get there? Number two, constantly we need to be praising process, not approval. So instead of focusing on them, focusing on the process. How did you get to that answer? And at the same time, pumping their autonomy. How do you want to do this? And then bringing in those metacognitive questions. What do you notice? What are you observing? How do you feel? What do you think? How can you move forward here? Solution focus. These will help you to move your learner away from the teacher pleasing, which sometimes, by the way, is a habit as well for the learner. But it's also the teacher that needs to be honest and authentic with the learner. Now, I'm still going to get provocative here, everyone. Sometimes we come into this teacher identity, and let's be very honest here. Teacher identity in many places in the past, and still in some places today, implies status and prestige. Now, actually, when you come into the realm of professional coaching, coaching is about equality. It's about partnering. It's about removing status. How can I help my learners feel that I'm partnering with them to learn? I'm not just here as a top-down, regurgitating the information that I know, delivering monologues of what I know, and then praying that you're going to go away and learn it. So definitely, I think we need to understand, maybe in this consciousness process, we start to need to move away from what's driving us in this identity as a teacher. I'm going to be provocative again, so warning light. I confess, and I look at myself years ago, and especially with groups of kids, my whole voice would change. My whole manner would change because I took on the persona of the teacher. Nowadays, you get me with a group of kids, my voice won't change. And I think this is another thing to really ask ourselves when I'm sitting in that role of a teacher, am I being me, authentic me? Is my voice changing? Are my behaviors changing? Are my mannerisms different? Is the way that I speak to them different? And this is where I think we need to sit in as authentic you. We don't need to put on the persona anymore because we're sitting there with them on that honesty basis, saying, look, I'm here to help. I know this and I would love to transfer this knowledge to you. How can we do that? What's going to be an effective way to do that? How can I partner with you to do that? So again, it's this consciousness of our authenticity with the other person. Now let's touch upon other. Oh, Agatha, kids, absolutely. Kids can see right through when somebody is that authentic partner or they come in as the teacher status and they're there to command and direct and whatever. Yes, absolutely. Marissa, you know that as well. You work with kids. And may I say, the kids of today are even more aware. The kids of today are coming into a different type of child that we're learning from them. They're very different. Now, let's go into some other provocative questions here for the teacher, the consciousness. I confess I spent a lot of time and many, many years of my life in this space of I want to help. I want to help other people. I want to help teachers. I want to rescue. It's really interesting because as soon as I say that, or as soon as we say that, we're implying that there's something wrong with the other person. And if I say, I want to help to fix you, I'm implying there's something wrong with you. If I say, I feel sorry for you, I'm implying that my judgment is you're not in the space that I think you should be. Now, these are powerful questions because if we're really coming into consciousness, I need to be aware what's driving me. Who am I to want to rescue anybody? Who am I to want to say that there's something wrong with anybody? Who am I to say that my perspective on life is the right one? All of this for me is this package of consciousness and this package of now. How can I stay on that neutral territory? How can I stay on that? I have no baseline for anybody else. I have my own baseline, but that's all. And anybody who's coming to me, I respect and appreciate and honor where you are coming from. So I totally accept your starting point with me. And then how can I help you get to where you want to get to? And I cannot judge anything about where you want to get to because that's your choice. So consciousness actually means going deeper into our bias, our judgments, our personas that we're bringing in to that learning space. And how we can move away from the you should, you need, you ought into what do you need? What's going to help you? And we're really making this into what's going to make you successful here, the learner success. So we're moving away now from the provocation. I'm going to move away. And by the way, these are questions that are constantly in my mind. And if ever I feel some sort of judgment coming up, it's like, oh, what is that? Observing it and removing it. And really understanding how I can move forward from that very neutral baseline. And this is where we're coming into our own consciousness. And as I said earlier, it's not only about the teaching, the learning, but one thing that has really helped me over the last 10 years, it has been the disciplining my own brain. How do we discipline the brain? We discipline the brain by really making it come into some sort of focus. And that can be with mindfulness, that can be with meditation, it can be with gratitude statements, it can be guided meditation, it can be walking meditation, it could be going for a run, it could be listening to music, but it's about you starting to operate your operating system and you noticing what it needs at any given time. Now, for me, meditation really did help. And when I say meditation, I mean 1 to 2 hours a day. That, for me, transformed my whole brain over years. Now, what's the difference between meditation and mindfulness? Well, meditation, you have a lot of techniques to go into those deeper states, and you're training the brain for attention, awareness, and mental clarity. Whereas mindfulness is more coming into the present moment, the now, the body scans, the what's happening around me. Now, they are quite different, by the way. A lot of meditation research. Harvard has their own research on meditation. I think their own department, Stanford as well, own department. There's so much meditation research and mindfulness research. Now, interestingly, I'm actually reading a book at the moment by Richard Davison and Daniel Goleman, who seemingly were part of this movement in the 1970s, and they were fascinated in meditation. I didn't realize, but they were both outliers. They were very much out of the mainstream research, and they were getting thrown out of all these different places because they were coming up with all of this meditation weirdness in the 1970s. And in the 1970s, the neuroscientists, the early psychologists and neuroscientists were really battling for the theory of neuroplasticity because nobody believed them. And it's interesting that they went on this meditation journey. And actually, part of what I was reading, they were saying that some of this research might actually be questionable because of the way the research was performed. I'm just throwing that in there because I was also a little bit shocked at their comments, but I'll tell you more when I get deeper into the book. But a lot of research showing how the brain can change structurally and functionally. And I think we really understand that, yes, the brain can change. And I have to say that Thomas Feiner, who is one of the neurofeedback experts in the world, actually in the world, he has his neurofeedback center in Germany, in the south of Germany, and also connected with another famous feedback in Cleveland, Ohio. And Thomas took the first recording of my brain on the left That was back in 2016. And I don't know if you can see everybody. Can you see that middle, the second line down, the middle brain with the blue? That actually shows that my brain had a deficit of alpha brainwaves back in 2016. And he actually asked me, do you have attention deficit? Or it could also be childhood trauma. Yes, there was childhood trauma. Now, 2016, I think I started meditating heavily in 2014. And all through those years, meditating very heavily, doing a lot of practice, mindfulness meditation. And then you can see 2023. Oh, and by the way, look at the incoherence across the areas of my brain on the first one in 2016. And now look at 2023 and look, that alpha deficit is nearly gone. And look at how beautifully coherent my brain is now. Well, it was in 2023. Maybe at the moment it's a little bit adult, but you can see the difference, and I can feel the difference, everybody. I can feel the difference. And the more consciousness kicks in, the calmer my brain is. And that's my first-hand experience. Now, everybody's different. You may have different experiences. You may do it in different ways. You may do it with some people go into that runner's high when they go running. Some people listen to music and go into that flow state. Some people do walking meditations. Some people go into the mindfulness and the mindfulness practice. But what we're seeing is that it really can change the brain. Now, as we are coming into the final part of today, when you have a balanced autonomic nervous system, you create a baseline of peacefulness in the brain. And yes, there are the occasional spikes of the sympathetic nervous system. So yes, you do have some reactions, but they are less. And actually, it's to deal with those situations. But immediately the brain goes back to the baseline, which is that peacefulness. And that's what we're aiming for. Now, if we can help children and teenagers and even adults to understand you can achieve this, it is achievable. That's consciousness. So, everybody, I asked you to observe this picture. And obviously, it's famous, Michelangelo's picture. Why did I choose this picture? What do you see in this picture? So Agatha is saying creation. Yes, it's the creation of creativity. Ollie, you're saying the heart and the brain. Maria Grazia, connection. Attempting to connect. Leticia, thank you for that. Connection. Yeah. And in fact, we often see the bigger picture of the fingers, connectedness without dependency. Interesting, isn't it? Now, apparently, reaching the impossible star, I love that. And love, yes. Now, apparently, I think it was in 2023, Franklin Meshberger actually showed that God and the angels are actually in the brain. And if you look at it, you can clearly see it's almost like you've got the brain stem down below. You've got the cerebellum at the back, got the prefrontal cortex at the front. Now, honestly, everybody, this is the first time that I realized this as I was doing the research this week. Let me go back to the full picture. How amazing is that? So some people criticized what Meshberger said. I actually tend to agree that, yeah, it really looks like the picture is showing God giving knowledge to man, giving knowledge to Adam. So I hope from now on, when you see this picture, it will remind you of consciousness and us as conscious beings. And this is how we are taking education into the 21st century. It's really one of the disciplines that is slow to change, but hopefully all of you are going to be the turbo boost to help it change. And if any of you are interested, the Neuro Language Coaching course, we've been running the course since 2012. It was and still is one of the only accredited language coaching programs in the world. It consists of 36 accredited hours with the International Coach Federation and UK Continuous Professional Development. There are over 2,100 neurolanguage coaches in the world. Ollie, yes, we'll be coming to another anniversary soon. Absolutely. I hadn't realized that, but you're absolutely right. We will be. It'll be next year, 15 years. Wow. And every now and again, we come together in our conference. We just had the conference and we're all still burning and reverberating from that amazing, amazing conference. Next year will be the 26th, 27th, 28th of May in Sitges. So save the date, everybody. And I do want to share with all of you that, oh, I've got the wrong dates up there. 2027 will be the 26th, 27th, and 28th. If you're interested to do our free course, with pleasure, it gives you a little bit of insight into how we change the way we communicate. But something new. I'm going to be holding masterclasses over the month of August. And these masterclasses are going to be a little bit of an extension of these webinars that we're doing at the moment. So the first one is going to be, it's going to come into the practical side, so the neuro practice. And they're going to be 2 hours each time. They're going to be Friday evening, Saturday morning, and there will be 6 of them. The first one on metacognition and awareness, the second one on emotional triggers, the third one, effective communication and dopamine. The fourth one, active listening, powerful questions. The fifth one, promoting autonomy and responsibility. And number 6, attention and motivation. The price will be €40 per masterclass. And if you do all 6, you will achieve the certification of Elsa, help me. We created the name yesterday. The Neuro Heart Brain Friendly Learning Certification, I think we called it. Elsa's going to help me there. Yes. So, Ollie, yes, it's going to be a hot, sizzling summer. Neuro Heart Education Certificate in Brain Friendly Learning, yes. And with the badge as well for that brain friendly learning. And if any of you are interested to do the full courses, we have one starting on the 17th, one starting on the 20th, and do check out our website with the teacher trainers who are delivering in different languages. So do have a look at those. And at this point, everybody, I'm going to stop the stop the show and move into questions, comments, observations. Anybody like to jump on? Have I left you all gobsmacked? My apologies for the provocations, by the way. And just that you know, these are questions that are for me as well, constantly. So, yes, just to say that we are issuing certificates on a case by case. If you need a certificate, please email us and tell us, and then we will do those certificates. Andrea, always good to see you. How are you? Oh, hang on. I'm struggling with the sound. No, Andrea, do you want to try it without the headphones?
Okay. Can you
Yes.
hear me now?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Well, right. Yeah, good to see you too. I was saying, good to see you all. And well, thanks for this webinar. Actually, it it's it gave me a lot of food for thought, and there's a lot I can resonate with, and there's a lot I can of connections I can make, not only regarding my work, my clients, but or also regarding myself, and so there's a lot of thoughts which came out during the webinar. There is one in particular which is now most fresh in my mind, and it's actually the situation I found myself in last Wednesday. I I'm trying to observe um, how my brain works and what kind of thoughts it is producing, and to take a little bit of distance from my thoughts and redirect them. But I'm not. When it comes to redirection, I'm not there yet. But at least I'm able to recognize my when I love to think or direct my attention to something different. But the other day, I was last Wednesday, I was at an appointment with the dentist, and it was because for the extraction of wisdom tooth, and I wasn't really looking forward to it, and was in a state of anxiety in a way. Yeah, there was also another matter which mixed up with it. There had been some, let's say, misunderstanding in relation to what I had paid and what I was getting for what I had paid. And
Mm, yeah.
when I got to dentist and I sat on, was ready for treatment, I was trying to speak to the dentist, and I think I can speak Spanish reasonably well, but there I was kind of blocked. I got stuck on a word which I couldn't remember, and I was looking at the dentist, and I was um, perceiving that he wasn't getting my foot, and he wasn't in the mood to listen to me. So that made me feel also more frustrated about it. I did the best I could, and I tried to keep going. And my Spanish was struggling. My brain was struggling to produce the kind of food I wanted to produce.
Mm.
And I finally got through it. But when you find yourself in this kind of situation, there's lots of other thinking which kick in. So I
Yeah.
started having thoughts like, you've been in this country since 2004, uh,
Mm.
and you couldn't express yourself in an articulated way.
Mm.
Knew exactly why I couldn't do it, but I couldn't help having that kind of, self blame thought.
Yeah.
And other thoughts such as you're helping people, communicating and you couldn't communicate.
Yeah.
What kind of coach are you? I know that's trash thinking, and but I
Mm.
couldn't help having those kind of thoughts in that moment.
Mm. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, that's one thing I wanted to. I suppose
Mm.
even though we do this work, and we're professional in what we do, we're still humans, and we are still a kind of a work in progress in a way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We come back to the Carol Dweck. We're not yet there, all of us. All of us. Now, but there we see a lot of things happening, Andrea. Thank you for sharing this story. Now, what's fascinating is number one, you weren't looking forward to it. Number two, there was unfairness going on because of what you were saying about the payment and all of that. So that was something else, another trigger there. Number three, your dentist was ignoring you. Your dentist had no emotional intelligence to understand how you were feeling in that situation. And the natural tendency for all of us is to blame ourselves.
Hmm.
Now, at what point are we going to start calling out these people? And at what point are we going to say, you're a dentist? You should understand medically how I feel in this chair. How could you, my dentist, demonstrate to me a little bit more emotional intelligence? And this is something that professionals are not giving us enough of. Doctors, dentists, teachers, university professors, they're not giving us enough of that emotional intelligence for us to feel safe enough. Obviously, in those moments, your brain was shutting down and saying, whatever. And as you said, the tendency then is that we're going in blaming ourselves. But at what point do we start to observe the whole situation to see how all of us as players are impacting that situation? Andrea, seriously, I would have got up and walked out. I would have got up and walked out. Unfortunately, I go into those reactions more and more. The more conscious I get, the more I get into those reactions of, sorry, I'm not playing your game anymore. I'm going somewhere else. And I'm going to find a dentist that's actually going to be emotionally intelligent with me because that's the world that we're moving into now. So, Andrea, I maybe next time you'll say to this dentist, okay, sorry, I've found somebody nicer than you.
Hmm.
Somebody who tolerates my fight or flight or tolerates my moments of, But thank you for sharing that. Really, really.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. And it's so real, everybody. We feel always that it's us. But no, Andrea, I know you're a brilliant coach and I know you're helping a lot of people. And yes, we're still human, all of us. Absolutely. Like me with the police. By the way, the funny story is when the police stopped me some months ago, some of you know that when everything was fine. And when I went to turn the car on, it wouldn't start. The battery was dead. So I actually ended up with four policemen pushing me, which was historical, hilarious. Anyway, Agatha. Yay! My turn. Good morning, it's very early for you. Good morning, Agatha.
It
Brazil.
is, Rachel. It's still a bit early, and that's why I won't turn on my camera. Sorry about that, but
It's
my
okay.
hair's all over the place. Can you hear me well, by the way? There's a
We
bit of
can.
echoing
We
here.
can.
Okay, thank you. First of all, lovely to see you. I love to see your smile, Rachel. It just makes me smile. Emotional contagion.
Emotional contagion is real.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I actually wanted to share two things. First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing about your panic attacks in your late 20s. I had panic attacks for about 2.5 years. It started when I was 28. Of course, I'm in my 40s now. I'm 43 now. And I just wanted to share that I'm actually so grateful that I struggled for all that time, because it made me a lot more sensitive and empathetic towards people who struggle as well. So
Yeah.
I see it as such a gift now, even though um, I struggled so much. Thank goodness I'm not suicidal, because it was a tough time, but I'm grateful for those panic attacks now. And I just wanted to share that. And also
Yeah.
about the coaching conversations with clients. Sometimes I struggle, and I was wondering about your thoughts on this, but sometimes I struggle with actually being too positive and giving too much sort of positive feedback. And I have this one client, she seems bothered by it sometimes, kind of like, oh, you're always saying I'm doing so great, and I don't want to hear that so much. And she's actually a bit negative. I've talked
Mm.
about her a little bit here before. Um, she's just a bit, she just has this sort of negative personality a bit. And the positive feedback bothers her a bit. And I struggle with that, because I am a positive person. And I want
Mm.
her to know she's doing well, and to honor the process and her efforts.
Mm.
Even though, of course, I'm always helping her, obviously, with what she needs to work on. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's what I'm there for. But I
Yeah.
do want to beat the drum of what's working for her, and just that annoys her a bit. Um, Basically about this one client. So being too positive. Any thoughts on that? Thank you.
So
Thank you.
and maybe you've already done this, Agatha, I would open up that conversation with her and I would really get out this annoyance and maybe say, I'm sensing that when I give you some positive feedback, it's not really landing with you. May we talk about this? And there I would really ask the question of how would you like me to recognize when you're doing something well? What type of things would you like me to say? How can I say it so that you don't feel that it's not true or you're feeling annoyed by it? And I would get her to give you the protocol of that feedback, Agatha.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's just great to hear that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah. And if she says, well, no, I just want to focus on the negative, I think there you could talk about brain chemistry and sort of talk about the fact that, look, if I'm constantly pumping out negative and criticism, which is what normal traditional teaching has always done, what we're doing is we're provoking the production of cortisol and adrenaline. Whereas if every now and again I'm giving you some success and some boosting and you're feeling, yes, there are things I'm doing, you're going to be releasing dopamine, you're going to be releasing endorphins, you're going to be releasing chemicals, oxytocin, serotonin, that are going to help you to learn. So my comments are not only about well done, they're also about brain chemistry and learning states and memorization, because we know dopamine is key for retention, engagement, and learning. So I would go into the chemistry a bit more as well, Agatha. Definitely.
Thank you, Rachel. Love to
Yeah.
hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? And also, Leticia, thank you for that. We need both negative and positive. Um, I'm going to be a little bit provocative here. And I always find when we're doing something for the first time, So when I get people into my coaching course and they're coaching for the first time, what use is negative feedback? Because if I give somebody negative feedback right from the beginning, how do we encourage them to try it again and to try it again? So I'm curious how negative feedback can be focused more into constructive help. Letitia, yes. Sorry, I'm not coming into what you were saying. I'm just picking up and going, extending on it. So I wasn't criticizing that statement. I was just turning it into, as you say, this how can we help it be constructive so that they pick themselves up and they try it again, and they try it again, and they try it again with positivity. You know, at the end of the day, mistakes are good because it helps us find the way. It really helps us find where we need to come in and change, or we need to come in and improve. So I would say, let's celebrate mistakes. Wouldn't it be strange if you got a teacher saying, well done, you made a mistake, brilliant? That would really shock people. What do you mean? Oh, it's great because it shows us where we need to come in. Because at the end of the day, that is what a mistake is. It's really helping us to orientate the learning. Yeah. Ollie, I just love this. From mistakes to retakes. Yes. Yes. Mistakes are retakes, Letitia. Yes, absolutely. They are. Yeah. Love it. We're playing with words now. We're getting playful. Any other questions or comments before we close today's webinar? Oh, we've gone over time a little bit. So we've gone over our 1.5. Next week, we have another new one, which I have to sit and do now. Next week is going to be on bridging structure and spontaneity in the learning process. That's going to be an interesting one as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here. Today was really, the webinar from today was stemming from a webinar that we were in a few weeks ago that I gave, where it really came up to me as this question of consciousness. You know, you can take consciousness into other directions. You might take it into the spiritual realm. You might take it into the religious realm. You might take it wherever you want to take it. I think it's about each and every one of us creating our own perception and understanding of consciousness. But the one that we are focusing in on as teachers is that 360-degree around, but also internal. So it's almost like the torus, the toroidal spiral within and outside as well that we are coming into. So have a beautiful rest of the day. I'll leave you with those provocative thoughts for you to take away and think a little bit more. And I know that all of your learners and all the people around you are going to be benefiting from all of this. Shall we all turn on the microphones, everybody, and say goodbye? Have a super weekend. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, Rachel.
Bye, 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 bye.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you so much.